Welcome inside the inaugural podcast for Daily Universe Sports. I'm Caleb Tonks.
And I'm Ethan Tanner. And let's go ahead and get right into things. We want to today talk about BYU basketball and where things stand. We're 20 games into the season already, 17 wins, 3 losses. One of those came in the non-conference. We played UConn, losing to them by 2 points. They're now ranked number 2 in the nation, which now sits incredible on our resume. And we've lost 2 games in the Big 12 play so far. Those coming at the hands of Texas Tech on the road, and just on January the 26th against Arizona. All of our losses come against, all of the BYU basketball losses are against Quad 1 teams, all ranked in the top 15. What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on that so far to be 17-3 in the season?
I think we've had a really good start to this season so far. One thing I'd like to see is just us get over that hump and get some more of those Quad 1A wins, especially against tough competition. We got an opportunity against Kansas this Saturday going into Allen Fieldhouse, and then next Saturday against Houston especially, where we get them at home. And so I'm hoping we were able to pick up one, if not both of those wins, just to have some good resume builders.
And agree. I feel really good about our win against Utah, both of those wins on the road and then at home at the rivalry game. And then we turned right around and had an opportunity against Arizona on the 26th. Caleb, you were at that game. I was at that game. What were your thoughts?
I was at the Arizona game as a fan, and it was probably one of the most electric atmospheres I've ever been in inside the Marriott Center. The Rock was just super electric. The fans were on their feet, especially in those last 3.5 minutes. I saw a bunch of the fans leave at that point because they thought the game was over, but eventually BYU came back and made it a game, almost pulled out the victory in that one.
Yeah, no, it was crazy. I saw I saw the same thing. All the fans left with like a couple minutes left, and I mean, the regular seats were all empty. Of course, the Rock stayed, but uh, man, that was crazy. And in the last minute to come back from 10 down to have a chance to win with 10 seconds left, that was honestly just an incredible experience. I was sitting up in press row, as you know. And man, I was trying so hard not to cheer. It's they always tell us you gotta be neutral when you're working for the press, and it was real tough because I'm a BYU Blue fan at heart. So
I bet that's really tough sometimes, especially when you have some loyalty to a certain team and things like that. Speaking of that atmosphere, that kind of like space that you got to be in, the men's basketball sports information director had there was something going on with that. Do you want to tell us more about that?
yeah, why don't we take a look at the video? Didn't you say you were watching some Instagram reels after, and this is what you saw?
Yeah, I saw Tyson Jex there. I think it's so interesting, the contrast there. You have somebody so animated like Greg Wrubell sitting next to Tyson Jex, who is more of he's their sports information guy, and you're just taught to just be mellow like that. I think that's just such a cool moment that they captured.
Yeah, that's hilarious. I work with Tyson since I'm the sports information director for track and field at BYU. And so I work closely with Tyson, and he's told us all the time, "Hey, you got to stay composed. Stay composed. You're part of the media." But you know what? He works so closely with AJ, and that might be the most high profile player he's ever had on that roster. He's worked with in his career, honestly. And so to see him make history, break a record set by Danny Ainge of all people, back in 1977, what an opportunity, and what an awesome thing to happen right before your eyes while you're sitting on the court. It's hard not to give it a little smirk like the way he did. So, and of course that was against Utah. That wasn't against Arizona, unfortunately for us. But man, what an incredible game that was too. But yeah, I love Tyson. What a guy. Not surprised by that reaction. That's hilarious. But speaking of exciting moments, looking forward, you mentioned it already. BYU heads out to face off against Kansas in Lawrence in the Allen Fieldhouse. Um, we found this video. Let's take a look at it. Yeah, so this was I believe this was early in the week. The game for between BYU and Kansas is on Saturday, and this is Monday. So, or sorry, Tuesday. My apologies. Tuesday. Those are the students waiting for a game that's not for what 4 or 5 days. What what
Yeah.
does that say to
I'm
you?
just I'm just surprised they let the students in that early because we know how BYU is about letting in students like that. It's like they let the students in like a whole week in advance just to camp out. And I heard something like they could save like 12 seats per person. And then like somebody has to be there like the whole week essentially.
That's just crazy. I can't even imagine. Because when I was saving seats for people at Lavelle Edwards, when I was a freshman and stuff like that, it was not like that. It was you got in a couple hours before and you just had to save seats for a couple hours. I can't imagine. I cannot imagine having to save seats for days at a time. That is just insane. But it really does say a lot about this matchup, don't you think?
Yeah, for sure. And this is such a high profile matchup between AJ DeBonsa and Darren Peterson for Kansas, projected number one and number two overall picks. And we know Darren Peterson has had some injuries this season. He's only played in about 10 games, I believe, having a hamstring injury and then most recently an ankle injury. But Bill Self said recently on the John Rothstein of CBS Sports that Darren Peterson plans on playing this Saturday against BYU. And so I guess that's pretty good news for Kansas.
Yeah, that is great news because I don't think it would be the same matchup without their star player, Darren Peterson. Um, he's like you said, he's the number one projected number one draft pick in the NBA, right above number two AJ DeBonsa, and so this is a real high profile matchup between two stars, not just two good teams, but two potential NBA stars next year. Um, and so I don't think Darren Peterson, regardless of his injury, is going to want to miss this game, especially the opportunity to play at home. What an advantage that is to play at home against such good competition.
Yeah, and I believe what's it, college game day, basketball game day is going to be there. And so it should
No
be
doubt.
pretty high profile for them just to be able to showcase these two future NBA stars. And for BYU
Yeah,
football, they just dropped their schedule on the 21st. What are your initial thoughts on their schedule?
it looks pretty good. It's very different from what we've seen in past years. As you know, BYU or just college football schedules in general are prepared years and years in advance. But this one was not finalized until not a month, 2 months ago, and that's just because some crazy stuff went down in the college football world just recently. I mean, we just saw Miami and Indiana face off in the college football playoffs. And so this last season is over. Time to announce new schedules. But the problem that we ran into was, they're still negotiating what the college football playoff is going to look like in the future. I mean, we just barely got news of what it's going to look like for next season with the 12 teams continuing to be the format that they're going with. But because of that whole, conversation that they're having, the SEC and the ACC both moved to 9 in-conference games. Um, and because of that, BYU's schedule changed dramatically. They needed that non-conference power team to play against, and they had Cal, as you know, they had Cal on their schedule, but then Cal had to drop that because of the new scheduling rules with their conference. And so what happened? We, Brian Santiago, athletic director for BYU, got in a call with Notre Dame's athletic director, and he said, "Hey, you know, let's do a game BYU versus Notre Dame 2027. What does that sound? How do you feel about that?" And he said, the Notre Dame athletic director came back and said, "How about 2026?" So, what a crazy schedule. What are your thoughts on the schedule?
I think it's interesting how we have Notre Dame in the middle of October, but then we have that early Big 12 game against Arizona. I think that's going to be really cool to have that early Big 12 game. And then you being from Colorado, going to Colorado State is probably pretty interesting for you. Tell us a little bit about like the BYU faithful in Colorado and how you think there's going to be a lot of BYU fans at that Colorado State game there?
I have no doubt there will be tons of BYU fans at that Colorado State game. I knew, I'm from Fort Collins. That's where Colorado State is based out of. Uh, and not a lot of people are Colorado State fans there. They haven't been super good in recent years. So it hasn't been super exciting to follow them. A lot of people where I'm from, despite having, the college right there in their hometown, a lot of people are CU fans. Um, but, members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints are typically, BYU fans. A lot of them are alumni from Brigham Young. So there are loads of fans. That stadium's going to be full of blue. Let me tell you that. I'm hoping that I can be there for that with my family. That would be an awesome opportunity for me. I've never seen BYU play against Colorado State, so that'll be an exciting opportunity for me. Um, yeah. So that's kind of how it is. There were a lot of fans at the Colorado, University of Colorado game this last season when BYU visited Boulder. And I would expect it to be even more fans this year, or yeah, this next season against Colorado State.
Yeah, I'm sure because that trip's not super far, and so I'm sure fans are going to be making that trip to Utah.
You mean to
As far as
Colorado?
tra- oh yeah, to Colorado, that's what I meant. You're right. But as far as transfers into the program this year, we have a few high-profile transfers that have come into the program. Just tell us a little bit about a few of those transfers.
Sure thing. Let's start off with the tight end position. That's one of the big names because, as you know, Ryder Lyons, quarterback, he's a recruit of BYU. He's currently serving a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and expected to come back and most likely take over the position for Bear Bachmeyer as if things continue to go well with Bear, assuming he doesn't transfer in and coming seasons or something like that. Um, but his older brother Walker Lyons, who was recruited by USC and was coming out of high school, was I believe a 4-star recruit. Um, you know, we picked him up out of the transfer portal, and he's been a star. So we're excited to see what the Lions can do alongside the Bears. So that's kind of the one I've been focusing on. What are some of the guys you've been thinking about that came in from the transfer portal?
I know we got Oregon receiver Kyler Casper, who's expected to take a big jump this year after not playing as much. I believe he's like 6'6". He's like, if you think about BYU receivers in the past, like Mitch Matthews and Nick Kurtz and those tall receivers, he's kind of in the build of those guys. But he's expected to kind of be competing for a starting spot there at our receiver spot. And then we got Kedu Luave, who was number one rated linebacker in the transfer portal from Cal. He was first team All ACC, had 97 tackles and 3 sacks, and so pretty solid season from him this year. He's expected to replace Jack Kelly at that linebacker spot, and so
Yeah, and that defense needs some beefing up with some of the guys that we lost. So I think that's a great pickup in the transfer portal there. Going back to Casper, he's came out of Oregon. He only had 2 receptions last year for 51 yards. So I'm kind of excited to see what he can do, especially with us losing Chase Roberts as he graduated this last year. Casper will be joining the likes of Parker Kingston, JoJo Phillips, in that wide receiver slot. We'll see who wins the number 1 spot. I would imagine it's probably going to be PK, but I don't know. What are your thoughts? Who do you think is going to win that wide receiver battle there?
I think Parker Kingston and JoJo Phillips are for sure going to be your top 2 receivers. I think that third spot is definitely up for grabs right now, but I'd like to see a guy like Cody Hagan potentially step up and take those reps, especially now that he's kind of gotten his feet under him after admission. Kind of expecting him to take that third spot potentially at wide receiver 3. But I really think that third spot is really up for competition right now. Who's going to step up, whether it's him, Tiger Bachmeyer, or Kyler Casper, who's going to get those reps.
Yeah, I think you're right on point there. Kind of moving over to, we want to talk about basketball. You were telling me about the women's basketball game against Oklahoma State. You said you watched that. It was just on Wednesday night. Um, out in Stillwater. What were your thoughts on that game?
It was a pretty tightly contested game through the first half. BYU was making their shots, making their 3-point shots, but they were leaving lots of players open on the 3-point line and just kind of letting Oklahoma State really get in their groove. And we kind of saw that lead just kind of take off. It went from 6 after the first quarter to 11 and then ended up being like a 16-point game to end the game. Former BYU basketball guard Amari Whiting had I believe she had 14 points in that game. And we did better with the turnovers. Last game, Delaney Gibb had 8 turnovers, and Mariah Hudgens had about 5 turnovers, I believe. And so we cut those turnovers down to 18, but our field goal percentage just was not there, with 29% from the field and 23% from 3, or 7 of 31 from 3. And so I'm sure they're hoping to see those percentages improve.
Yeah, no, it's tough to win when you go 7 for 31 from 3-point range. That is real tough. Especially when you get out rebounded as well, because you can shoot bad from 3, but clean it up and under the basket, make those layups. But they were out rebounded 51-39. It's just with those kind of numbers, you don't win games. You get losses like the one we saw, where they lost 67-51. It wasn't even that close. It was double digit loss. Um, Unfortunate for the ladies, especially coming off of a win against Texas Tech, to lose 2 straight like this. Hopefully they can get back in their groove and pick things up where they left off. Not a couple days ago. So they hopefully they can shake things off and look better.
Yeah, for sure. Um, Thank you guys for joining our Universe Live Sports podcast. Yeah,
Yeah, we're happy to make this our first podcast. So thanks for watching, those of you that are tuning in, and look forward to next week when we'll talk about hopefully a win against Kansas. I myself, Kansas fan, but it's going to be hard to be rooting for which side, but I'm hoping that BYU can pull through. I'm a BYU fan first. Um, Caleb, you can't make fun of me for that because I served my mission in Kansas, but yeah, tune in next time for that, and um, we'll see you later. Thanks for joining us, Caleb.
yeah, for sure. I'm not sure about that Kansas hoodie, but I guess we can let that slide here for now. But thanks y'all for joining us for sure. We'll see y'all next time.